Got a couple of opening remarks. I want to congratulate Coach Brooks and the women's basketball team. Outstanding. So much excitement around their program right now and what they're doing. My wife and kids and I, my daughters, we go to a bunch of the games. I love watching them. So we're going to go this weekend. Excited about that and the job they've done. And then congratulations to Coach Young and his group for their NIT bid. We'll be supporting him, obviously. And then Coach Roby and his wrestlers. I've got a wrestling in my background, and I got a lot of respect for those guys and what they do. And they've had a tremendous season, and look forward to watching them compete at the championships out in Tulsa. We just finished up phase one, which is our winter, which is morning workouts, lifts, runs, agilities, speed, change of direction, all those things. Forming a brotherhood, 5:30 a.m. dressed and ready, multiple days during the week. So guys really came through it strong. The roster looks a lot different. The investment in the sacrifice is much better. We're heading into phase two, which is really good. It's good for us. It's taking everything we did in phase one into phase two, which is spring. So we're excited about that. The roster looks completely different, and we've got some coaching changes that I'm really excited about. Watching the guys work this morning, and the coaches, really efficient and smooth in what they're doing. So fired up. We got an open practice for everybody March 25th. We did this last year. I got another one this spring. That'll be in Lane Stadium. I believe that's our 5th practice, which will be a chance for everybody to come out and see kind of what we're about. But, so that's kind of my opening remarks. I want to open it up for some questions. That's what's been going on with us.
With 2 new coaches in this week, is it sort of a crash course for those guys before spring ball opens on Thursday?
Yeah, so there's some familiarity, right? Through the interview process, you have a lot of discussions. Now with Zoom, you can talk multiple times and talk technique and fundamentals and where we're at, what they believe in, philosophies, and then familiarity with the offenses they've been around. That's been important, in the process. So that would be important with anybody. I'm not against bringing in somebody that's coming from a different school, but it sure makes the transition better when there's a lot of familiarity.
The changes that you ended up having on your staff, how far ahead did you see that this was coming, or was it? I think we met with a lot of those assistants that day.
Yeah, to be honest, we almost did this when I got hired. Tyler and I had a lot of conversations about it, and almost went that direction. For various reasons, we didn't. But like I mentioned earlier, a few weeks back, when Coach Glenn first was entertaining a coordinator's job somewhere else, Tyler and I had this discussion, and we knew there wasn't any doubt that's what we were going to do. And he's excited about it. I was excited about it. Feel really good about the relationship there and the play caller coaching the quarterbacks. And he was very involved at that position all winter. In fact, that kind of started down the stretch last year. So that's been coming. And then Coach Holt was always a tight end or running back guy for me. I always knew I wanted to hire him. And he's got just as much experience really at the tight end spot. He's had some productive guys there. He's a quality coach. That transition will be good. So excited about those moves. Yeah, Brad's happened pretty quick. There wasn't an interview process for him. He's got a long relationship with Coach Satterfield. It was an opportunity to be a coordinator, to make a promotion and a pay raise for his family. So that thing was kind of, open and shut quick. But Joe's was a little more through the weekend, and he'd actually had an additional interview with an NFL organization. And so he had a lot going on, and it was a really tough decision for him and his family. I went to their house on Sunday, and we spent a bunch of time talking. And, administration, we did everything. It wasn't about the money. It was about Joe and a fit for his family and what he wanted for his boys. And so, and he and Marcus got a long-standing relationship as well, all the way back to when Joe was a GA at Ohio State. So, but, we were able to move quick. I mean, you always have a ready list of guys that you've kind of seen in action or you've coached against or you've gotten to know and you've been impressed with that you're on your list for potential hires. So you go right to that list and you start talking and, and then if the situation works out where you have an open position, you've got a pretty good idea of the top 3 or 4 guys you'd like to get serious with.
What was the connection with Elijah Brooks? What do you like about what he brings? And he's a Maryland guy. How much does that help you guys on the recruiting trail, specifically in that state?
Yeah, first of all, I've recruited that school for a long time. We signed a couple kids out of there to Penn State, and I've was always impressed with the program, with his professionalism, with the type of players that were coming out of his program. Like I said, we had a chance to coach a couple of them on defense. And, just a really young, talented guy. A lot of times when you go in these high schools, certain guys stick out to you, and he always did for me. I was not surprised when Coach Loxley hired him to Maryland. He was a guy that we talked about at Penn State a couple of times, just as, how do we get this guy in our program? So, he was very interested in what we were doing here. We've had a relationship for a while. Obviously, his ties to our footprint were really important. His affection for Virginia Tech was really important. How his former players and guys that have coached with him, how they talked about him and felt about him, really important. He's a family man. He's got 3 kids and a wife, and, excited to have him on this journey with us. I think he's a great fit for us, going to really help us.
And Crook, obviously he's a West Virginia guy, so still in the footprint too. He's been all over the place, lots and lots of coaching experience. When did he come on your radar? What's your connection with him, and what do you like about everything he adds, especially with his experience?
Yeah, again, to me, Ron is everything that we're about. If you know my dad's history as a college coach in West Virginia, Ron spent time at West Liberty State where he played and coached, West Virginia Tech, Clarion, and Glenville. My dad coached at West Liberty State. I was at most of those practices. Coached at West Virginia Tech, coached in the PSAC, as did myself, and my mom's a Glenville graduate. So there's a lot of people that reached out to me about Ron that I know and trust and have for a long time. Harry Heasted being one of them. My East Stroudsburg guys that have known Ron forever. Guys that worked with him at West Virginia and Cincinnati that I know very well. I've met Ron many times. We spent some time at the convention this year, so he was on the short list immediately. And I did really well through the interview process. And you talk about his roots in West Virginia and what we want to be about and how we want to do this. He was our first choice. And I will say there were sitting O-line coaches in the SEC and the Big 12 that were in the final list that wanted this job.
Moving away from coaching, and you talked about the off-season conditioning heading into spring practice. With so many newcomers, how vital was it to get all these mid-year transfers, mid-year enrollees, get them acclimated to what you want to do so that way going into spring with new faces, especially on the offensive side, have those guys ready to roll come Thursday?
Yeah, I would say this. That's a great challenge and one that we talk a lot about and I put a lot of thought into. You recruit a high school player, you have 3 or 4 years to do that and get to know them, their family, their background, their interest, to make sure they understand what our tech experience would be like. For a transfer portal guy, you might have 2 or 3 weeks, and you got to figure out, are they right for us when they're sitting in this team room? Are they going to identify with what's important to us with the rest of the guys in the room? So, it's a challenge. I feel really good. We did a nice job last year. Guys that fit our program, that have been workers and investors and And I feel so far so good about this group. Guys that they don't say a whole lot. They're workers, and they're impressive, and they're earning the respect of everybody on the roster.
How long is your to-do list for spring practice? And maybe what are, you'd say, maybe your 2 or 3 top priorities?
Yeah, I mean, it's big. You're talking about things on the field? Yeah, obviously, we have to be able to run the football. So there was a lot of time spent this offseason in watching those cut-ups. What do we need to do better? Is it schematic? Is it technique? Is it fundamentals? Is it personnel? Where do we need to be better? And then defensively, we've got to be able we have to be able to rush the quarterback better. And so there was a lot of time spent. We brought in a hand combat expert that we used at Penn State. He's trained other, fronts where our linebackers and D-line spent a bunch of time with him. Our coaches did to, just escapability and things, and being able to rush the quarterback as blitzers or down linemen. But, there's a lot of things on the checklist right now. But those would be the first things on either side of the ball. Our snappers did a solid job, but if you go back and watch the cut-ups and you study them one after another, a little bit off the mark, which affected Peter's rhythm a little bit as a punter, some timing on some kicks. So, again, the offseason is very valuable if you allow it to be.
Hey, Coach, how you doing? Good to see you.
You too.
If you don't mind just talking a little bit about the energy. I mean, how exciting is it to kind of get back out there and see your guys come together? I know you talked a little bit about building that brotherhood, but what's the energy like right now, having a bunch of new faces out there? I mean, I know it has to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, first of all, they feel a tremendous amount of competition. You bring in 17 new scholarship players in January, 7 of them being older guys. I mean, it's, the minute they walk in the room, they're better because of their skill sets, and they're better because they make everybody around them better. So that's been refreshing. And, there's been attrition in a good way and addition in a good way. So the roster I'm excited about to see what these guys can do out on the football field. And then, just their level of investment and sacrifice has really improved. There's more guys that understand the approach and the purpose and how you got to do this to compete at this level, to be good at this level. So I'm excited. I told them this morning, we've had a great February. We've had a great, phase 1, but we got to take all these improvements to the practice field. We got to put them into play. They got to mean something. So that's the next step.
Tyler coaching quarterbacks. I know it's not necessarily a position he played or coached, but how comfortable do you feel? I know you've talked about it a little bit. How comfortable do you feel that he and the quarterbacks are going to gel right away? And how nice is it now that you're going to have an offensive coordinator that is also the quarterback's coach, so he can be hands-on with those guys even more than he was before?
Yeah, I didn't play linebacker, but I've coached some pretty good ones and would pride myself on being able to do that. But Tyler's one of those guys. There's coaches that are good coaches. There's coaches that are good coaches and see the big picture. And Tyler's certainly one of those guys. And he's coached O-line, he's coached tight ends, and I always felt like he's one of the brightest guys I've been around. And I think James Franklin felt that way. I think Urban Meyer felt that way. A lot of guys feel that way about Tyler. And so I'm excited for it. I think the quarterbacks have embraced it. They're excited. He was in that room a lot all February, and I think they kind of saw it coming.
Let's go out to Zoom for a couple.
All right, if you have questions on Zoom, please raise your hand. We'll start with Fago.
How you doing, Coach?
Hey.
What words of encouragement or advice can you give the upcoming group about living in the moment and not rushing the process?
Yeah, that's why we break everything down into phases. I don't want them worried about the fall right now. I don't want them worried about the summer. This winter in phase 1, I didn't want them thinking about spring ball. I don't know how you do that. I can't. You know, we got to get better at the task at hand each and every day, and trust in the process. And that's worked for me for a lot of years at multiple places. I'm a big believer in it, and I think the kids have bought into that. You know, it was, how do we win phase one? How do we have a great winter? You know, here's all the things we need to do. Here's the weaknesses we have to improve on. Here's the emphasis. And, you know, I think they did a nice job with that. And we'll transfer now, and it'll be about, you know, there'll be more scheme involved and fundamentals and techniques and breaking tackles and getting open and putting the ball on target, all those things. So, you know, need to have a good spring. You only get 15 days to go make it happen. So we got a lot of improvement we need to make.
Thank you, Coach.
All right, we'll go next to Tim Sullivan, please.
Yeah, Brent, you mentioned at the end of the regular season that you had exit interviews with all of your guys, and you know, in some cases that led to some attrition. I know right now you guys are overcommitted for the fall scholarship wise. Are you expecting that the roster that you have now is static at least through spring? When do you sort of see some of these things where guys have those maybe depth chart decisions to make, where they might opt to go elsewhere? Is that something that happens, you know, during fall camp, or is it something that could happen during the spring ball?
Yeah, it could happen at any point, to be honest. You know, everybody's always evaluated. The transfer portal window doesn't open till mid-April, but certainly, you know, we're making decisions and evaluating guys every day, and we'll have some hard decisions to make down the stretch here, which is a good place to be.
All right, Travis, we're good on Zoom.
All right, we'll come back in the room. Last one to Brooke in the back.
Hey, Coach.
Hey.
I just want to know, I guess, your feelings, not necessarily negative, just maybe positive or confidence of this spring heading into practice compared to last spring.
Yeah, again, I think, you know, I'm excited about just the whole process being a cycle through it. Everybody has a better understanding of what the standards and the expectations are. The players, the coaches, operationally, how efficient can we be in practice, you know, down in the strength, in the weight room, you know, all of it. We're just in a better place. Everybody's more on the same page. You know, as a staff, you know, we had another retreat back in February to make sure that we're growing in the right direction, and then of course, you know, we're constantly messaging to the team standards and expectations and how we're going to do things, and relying on our fundamentals, our 5 fundamentals that you know, are constantly, you know, in front of our players, that are important to us, and they're posted in our position room, they're posted in my office, in the weight room, and you know, so the culture's a whole year, 15 months down the road, which, you know, people understand more what we're talking about. So I'm excited about that piece of it and how that's going to impact our team this spring and moving forward. Good question. All right, thanks everybody.